The white ceiling of the hospital room swam before my eyes, and I couldn't seem to focus my gaze. The morphine was doing its job. The pain from the surgery had receded into the background, becoming a dull, distant ache. 3 days ago, they had removed a tumor. Benign, thank God, but the operation was complicated, and the doctors said recovery would take at least a month. Welcome to Betty's Stories. I share new life stories here every day, and I'd really appreciate it if you hit subscribe and liked my video. Now let's jump back into my story. I'm sure you'll love it if you keep listening till the end. The phone on the bedside table vibrated. I glanced over, and the name Marcus lit up the screen. My husband. In the 3 days since my surgery, he hadn't visited. He called once, asked if everything was all right, and hung up, citing an urgent meeting. I reached for the phone, and the movement sent a dull throb through my abdomen. Hello? Naomi, we need to talk. Marcus's voice was strange, nervous, and yet somehow triumphant. I didn't want to do this over the phone, but since you're stuck there for a while, what is it? I'm filing for divorce. The words dropped into the silence of the room like stones into water. I stared at the IV drip, which methodically measured out my life, drop by drop. Are you listening to me? Marcus's voice became irritated. I said divorce. I have another woman. It's been 6 months, so let's stop pretending we're a family. Chloe? I asked calmly. A pause. I could almost picture his confusion. How did you know? Doesn't matter. Yes, Chloe, she's younger, prettier, and she's not sick. And frankly, it's none of your business. Look, the main thing is, I sold the house and your car, too. Use the power of attorney. So when you get out of the hospital, go stay with your mother. You have no business here anymore. I stared at the ceiling and felt my lips stretch into a smile. How foolish you are, Marcus, I said softly. You didn't even realize that the house is actually... I cut myself off mid-sentence. What's actually what? Worry edged into his voice. Naomi, what do you mean? You'll live and you'll see. You can send the divorce papers through my attorney, and yes, Marcus, I'll be taking Miles. What attorney? You're in the hospital. You won't get Miles. What kind of mother are you in that condition? They'll declare you incapacitated. Goodbye, Marcus. I hit the end call button and let the phone drop onto the blanket. I closed my eyes. 12 years. 12 years I had been his wife. I cooked his dinners, laundered his shirts, and bore him a son. 12 years I had closed my eyes to his late returns, the strange messages on his phone, the way he eyed the young waitresses in restaurants. But I wasn't stupid. Never. We met at a corporate holiday party when I was 23. I had just finished my accounting degree and landed a bookkeeper job at a construction firm. Marcus was a sales manager there, tall, smiling, with dimples in his cheeks. He courted me beautifully. Flowers, movies, walks along the riverfront. He told me I was special, that he had never met anyone like me. My father, George, had passed away from a sudden stroke a year before our wedding. My mother, Joyce, was left alone in our house, a large 2-story home in a comfortable suburb of Atlanta that Dad had built himself. Well, not entirely himself. He was a general contractor and knew every builder in the city. The house was gorgeous, with a spacious back deck, a garden, and a 2-car garage. When Marcus and I decided to marry, Mom suggested we live with her. The house is big, there's room for everyone, Marcus agreed with enthusiasm. Even better, no mortgage payments. A year after the wedding, Mom suddenly decided to go live with her sister, Auntie Clara, in rural Georgia. Auntie Clara is sick, she explained. She can't manage alone. I'll stay with her for a bit. That bit stretched into years. Mom would visit 2 or 3 times a year, stay for a couple of weeks, and then leave again. Marcus and I were left alone in the house. Then Miles was born, and I was too busy with the baby to notice the obvious. And there was plenty to notice. Marcus started coming home later and later from work. He spoke of projects, clients, negotiations. I believed him. Then I started finding restaurant receipts in his shirt pockets, places we never went to together. The checks were for 2 people. I convinced myself they were business lunches. Then came the phone calls. He would step out onto the deck, talking quietly, sometimes with a peculiar laugh. When I asked who called, he would answer carelessly, "Oh, just someone from work." Then, 5 years ago, I saw a text on his phone. He had forgotten it in the kitchen when he went to shower. The screen lit up, and I involuntarily read, "Missing you, my sugar bear. Can't wait for tonight." The sender was Shayla. My heart plummeted into my stomach. I stood there, phone in hand, and felt my world crumbling. I wanted to scream, to hurl the phone against the wall, to storm into the bathroom and demand answers, but I did none of that. Instead, I put the phone back and sat at the kitchen table. I poured myself some iced tea and started thinking. Divorce, scandal, confrontation. Miles was 5 then. He adored his father. Marcus would toss him up to the ceiling, give him piggyback rides, teach him to ride his bike. To destroy that, to deprive my son of his father, but I wasn't going to tolerate infidelity either. For the next few months I watched, silently, carefully, unemotionally. Shayla turned out to be a secretary from a neighboring office. Their affair lasted about a year, and then she quit and moved up to Seattle. Marcus was moody for a week or two, then returned to me, cheerful, attentive, caring. He even brought me flowers. I accepted the flowers and smiled, and I kept watching. Over the following years, he had 2 more women, Tiffany and Brenda. I figured out both of them by the same signs: late returns, secretive calls, sudden business trips. I created a separate folder on my computer where I saved screenshots of his messages, copies of strange receipts, and notes on his movements. Why, I didn't entirely understand myself, but I just felt that someday it would be useful. Chloe appeared last year, young, 25, with red hair and enormous green eyes. She came to work at our company. Yes, by that time I was the chief financial officer, and Marcus had risen to commercial director. She was hired as the executive assistant. The CEO was delighted with her efficiency. Marcus was also delighted, but about other things. I saw how he looked at her during meetings, how he casually lingered by her desk, how he walked her to her car after work. Chloe would blush, giggle, and adjust her hair. 3 months later, I found a key card for a downtown hotel, the Grand View, in his jacket pocket. That's when I made my decision. No scandal, no divorce, just preparation. First, I called Mom. "Mom," I said, "do you remember you always said the house should stay in your name? That you shouldn't transfer it to me or Marcus?" "Of course I remember," Mom said cautiously. "Why? What happened?" "Nothing yet, but something might. That house is Dad's legacy. I don't want it falling into the wrong hands." Mom was silent for a moment. "He's cheating on you." "Yes." I didn't deny it. "Yes, and it's been going on long enough." "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Because I can handle it myself. Mom, I just need to know the house is safe." "The house is in my name. It always has been, and it will stay that way. I intentionally never signed it over, even though Marcus hinted a few times. Now I understand why." Next, I went to see Ms. Janet Harper, an attorney and an old friend of my mother's. She listened in silence, taking notes in a legal pad, then took off her glasses and looked at me over the top of them. "Okay, Naomi, the house belongs to your mother. That's good. The car is financed in my name, but through a lease from my company. Excellent. Selling it without your consent is impossible. What else do you have?" "A condo downtown. We bought it 3 years after the wedding. It's rented out." "Community property. In a divorce, it will be split equally unless you can prove you invested more personal assets. Do you have proof?" I nodded. "I put down the initial deposit, money from the sale of my father's old business stocks. That was before they devalued. I kept the documents." "Good girl," Ms. Harper smiled. "What else?" "Accounts. He has several outstanding loans that I found out about accidentally, large amounts." "That's interesting. If he took out loans without your knowledge for personal use, in a divorce, they remain his problem alone." For the next 6 months, I lived a double life. By day, a caring wife, preparing dinner, and asking my husband about his workday. By night, a woman methodically compiling a file on the person she shared a bed with. I made copies of all the documents for the house and the condo, photographed his loan agreements, which I found in a desk drawer. I recorded a few of his phone conversations with Chloe, not for court, but for myself, to remember who I was dealing with. I opened a separate account at a different bank and started saving money, small amounts that wouldn't attract attention, and I waited. I knew that sooner or later he would make his move. Marcus isn't the type to live a double life forever. He needs certainty, a new, young wife, a beautiful life, the feeling of being a winner. And me? I was old furniture that needed to be thrown out. The surgery accelerated his plans. When I was rushed to the ER with a suspected appendicitis, which turned out to be a tumor requiring urgent surgical intervention, Marcus saw the perfect opportunity. A sick wife, incapacitated, helpless. He could take everything and play the victim. She was sick. I couldn't live like that anymore, you understand? Only, he didn't know I was ready. The day after his call, Mom walked into the hospital room. She had taken an overnight bus from rural Georgia as soon as she heard about the surgery. "Oh, honey." She hugged me gently, careful not to snag the IV, and for the first time in days, I allowed myself to cry. Not from pain, not from resentment, but from relief. There was a person by my side I could trust. "He called yesterday," I said, when the tears dried. "Divorce, and he said he sold the house." Mom pulled back and looked at me. There was no panic in her eyes, only cold fury. "Sold my house? He thinks he sold it." Mom's lips twitched into a smirk. "What an idiot!" "Mom, I know, but he could have fabricated documents, a power of attorney in your name. We need to check." "I already called the Register of Deeds. I'll get the title report tomorrow morning, but even if he tried to pull something with the documents, the sale would be invalid. I'm alive and of sound mind." I leaned back against the pillow. "What about Miles? He said he'd take Miles." Mom's face clouded over. "Miles is with him now. I called. I wanted to talk to my grandson. Marcus wouldn't let me. Said the boy shouldn't be upset by talking to his sick grandmother." That hurt. More than the incision on my stomach. My son, my 9-year-old boy, who just a week ago hugged me before school and said, "Mom, I love you to the moon and back." What was Marcus telling him now? That his mother abandoned him? That his mother was bad? That he would have a new, young, and beautiful mother? "We'll get him back," Mom said firmly. "Everything by the book. That scoundrel will regret this." I spent the next 2 weeks in the hospital. The stitches healed slowly. The doctors weren't rushing my discharge. Marcus didn't call again, but Ms. Harper came every 3 days with updates. "I got the report from the Register of Deeds," she said during the first visit, spreading papers on the bedside table. "The house is still in Joyce Ellington's name, your mother. No transactions have been recorded. But he said he sold it, so he's either lying or he pulled some kind of scheme with fake documents. If it's the latter, that's a criminal offense, fraud. I filed a police report." A week later, the picture cleared up. He actually tried to sell the house. Ms. Harper flipped through the documents, found buyers, showed them a fake power of attorney from your mother, and took a deposit of $75,000. But when it came to registering the sale, the Register of Deeds requested confirmation, and everything stopped. The buyers are furious and filed a complaint with the police. I stared at her, not believing my ears. So he didn't just want to cheat me, he cheated other people, took money for a house he doesn't own. Exactly, and that is pure fraud, a felony charge, up to 10 years in federal prison. I closed my eyes. Marcus, Marcus, you wanted to get rid of me and start a new life, and instead, you dug your own grave. "What about the car?" I asked. "He tried to pull something with the car, too. Found a buyer, took the money, but the car is leased. It can't be sold without the leasing company's consent. The buyer went to the police, another complaint of fraud." I involuntarily laughed, though it hurt to do so. How many people did he deceive? At least 3, and that's just what we know about. I was discharged at the end of the 3rd week. The doctor thoroughly explained that I needed rest, no stress, no physical exertion. I nodded, knowing that there would be no peace. Mom was waiting for me outside the hospital entrance with a taxi. "Home?" she asked. "Home," I paused. "He won't let us in the house, will he? He's probably changed the locks. Let him try. That's my house. We drove up to the familiar gate. The front gate was locked. A new security camera was visible above the fence. Mom typed the code into the intercom. It didn't work. He changed it, she hissed through clenched teeth, pulling out her phone. Hello, police? I'm being locked out of my own home. The address is 14 Maple Street. Yes, I'll wait. The precinct officer arrived in about 40 minutes, an older, mustachioed man whom Mom had known for 20 years. Ms. Ellington, what's going on here? My son-in-law decided he owns the place, Officer Miller. Changed the locks, changed the code, and this is my house. Officer Miller sighed and pulled out his radio. Let's sort this out. Marcus wasn't home, but Chloe was, disheveled in a housecoat, clearly not expecting visitors. When the officer explained the situation to her, she paled and retreated into the house. I stood on the threshold of my mother's own house and looked at the woman who intended to take my place. Red hair, green eyes, a frightened little face. Just a girl. Marcus lied to you, I said calmly. I'm alive. This is my mother's house, and you need to come out and pack your things. Chloe burst into tears right there in the entryway. Through her sobs, I made out something about love, promises, and how she honestly didn't know. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Where is my son? I asked. At school, Chloe sniffled. Marcus dropped him off this morning. I looked at the clock. Noon. School ends in an hour. Mom, you stay here with Officer Miller. Make sure this guest only takes her own things. I'm going to get Miles. I took a taxi to the school, arriving 15 minutes before dismissal. I stood by the gate, looking at the familiar building where 3 years ago I first led my kindergartner by the hand. How scared he was then, clinging to my hand, not wanting to let go. And I told him, Miles, Mommy will always be near. No matter what happens, Mommy will come. The bell rang, and the schoolyard filled with children. I saw Miles right away. He was walking with 2 other boys, talking animatedly. My son seemed to have grown in the weeks I was in the hospital, or perhaps it only seemed that way. Miles? He turned at my voice. His expression changed, first joy, then confusion, then something resembling fear. Mommy? I wanted to hug him, but he took a step back. Dad said you weren't allowed to get stressed, that you're very sick, and you're better off resting in a special place. My heart constricted with a different, non-physical pain. Miles, I'm all better. They discharged me from the hospital. I came for you. But Dad said, the boy lowered his eyes, that you won't live with us anymore, and that I'm going to have a new family, and that it's better for everyone. I crouched down in front of him, ignoring the pain in my abdomen. Miles, look at me. I'm your mother. I'm not going anywhere, no matter what your father said. I love you more than anything in the world, and I will never abandon you. Do you understand? He looked at me distrustfully from under his brow. But Dad said you left us, that you wanted to run away with some other man. I felt a cold, heavy rage building inside me. Marcus lied about me to his own son. He lied to turn him against me. That's not true, I said firmly. I was in the hospital. I had surgery. I couldn't come home because I was very weak, but I thought about you every single day and wanted to get better as quickly as possible. Miles was silent. I could see the conflict in his eyes, his father's words versus his mother's. Mom, he finally decided, is it true that we're going to live separately now? You and Dad? Yes, honey, that's true, but that doesn't mean I'm abandoning you. You will live with me. And Dad? Dad will live separately. Miles nodded, processing the information. Then he suddenly stepped forward and hugged me fiercely, desperately like a child. I missed you, Mom. I squeezed him tight, feeling my eyes water. Me too, sweetie. I missed you so much. We went back home to my mother's house, which was now my refuge. Chloe was gone. The officer had made sure she only took her own things. Mom was bustling in the kitchen, reheating burgers she had bought on the way. "Grandma!" Miles rushed to her. "Miles, my sweet boy." They hugged, and for a moment I felt like everything would be okay, that we would manage, that together we were stronger than any lies or betrayal. But I knew this was only the beginning. That evening, Marcus called. His voice was completely different, no longer triumphant but scared. "Naomi, what are you doing? You kidnapped Miles. I'm going to call the police." "Call them," I replied calmly. "And while you're at it, explain to them why you forged a power of attorney for my mother's house and took money for property that doesn't belong to you." Silence. "How do you know? Who told you?" "The buyers you defrauded, the police, the register of deeds. Marcus, you buried yourself. I'm just watching." "Naomi, listen, we can make a deal. I needed the money. I was deep in debt. I was being threatened. You don't understand the situation I'm in." "I understand perfectly. And you will understand soon, too. See you in court." I hung up and turned off the phone. Mom came into the room looking at me intently. "He called?" "Yes, asked to make a deal." "And what did you say?" I smiled. "What I had to say. The war is just beginning, Mom, but I'm ready for it." Mom sat down next to me and took my hand. "Naomi," she said seriously, "there's something I want to tell you. I've wanted to for a long time, but I couldn't bring myself to." "What is it?" "Remember I insisted the house stay in my name, that you shouldn't sign it over after the wedding?" "Of course. You said it was Dad's legacy and should remain in the family." Mom nodded. "That's true. But there was another reason." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "Marcus came to me a year after the wedding, asking me to sign the house over to both of you, said it was the right thing to do, that a young family needed security for the future. He never told me that. I know, because I refused him. And do you know what he told me then?" I shook my head. He said, "Joyce, you know you won't live forever. Sooner or later, this house will still go to Naomi, which means it will go to me." And he smiled so proprietorially. That's when I understood everything. I looked at Mom, feeling a coldness rise inside me. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you were happy, or you thought you were. Miles had just been born. I didn't want to ruin your family with guesses and suspicions, but I kept the house in my name just in case. And as you can see, it wasn't for nothing." I hugged her tightly, grateful. "Thank you, Mom." "Nothing to thank me for, honey. We're family, and family needs to protect each other." It was getting dark outside. Somewhere in the house, Miles was laughing, having found his old toys in the attic. Life was continuing, complicated, unpredictable, sometimes cruel. But it was continuing, and I was ready for it. I couldn't sleep for a long time that night. I lay in my old room, the one where I spent my childhood and youth, where I dreamed of love and happiness, and thought about how everything turned out. 12 years ago, I got married with the absolute certainty that it was forever. White dress, veil, bouquet of roses. Marcus in a tuxedo, handsome, smiling. I swear to love and cherish. Empty words, as it turned out. Beautiful wrapping with no substance. But I didn't regret the years we spent together, because there was Miles, my son, my flesh and blood, my greatest victory in this failed marriage. For his sake alone, it was worth going through all of this. Around 3 o'clock in the morning, I heard soft footsteps in the hallway. The door creaked open, and a child's head peeked through the gap. "Mommy, are you asleep?" "No, honey, come in." Miles climbed under the blanket with me, curling up. "I had a bad dream." "What kind?" "That you left again, and never came back." I held him close. "I'm not going anywhere, I promise. Truly, truly. Go back to sleep." He quieted, warmed and comforted, and I lay in the darkness, thinking about how much work lay ahead. Courts, attorneys, police, interrogations, documents, hearings. The fight for what was rightfully mine, for my son, for dignity, for justice. But I was ready, because I wasn't the kind of woman who gives up. I was woken up by a phone call in the morning. The number was unfamiliar. "Hello, is this Naomi Ellington?" A young, anxious female voice. "Yes, it is. Who is this?" "My name is Chloe. We met yesterday." I sat up in bed, automatically smoothing my hair as if she could see me. "And what do you want?" "I need to talk to you, please. It's important." There was something so desperate, so broken in her voice. I considered it. Was this girl my rival, my enemy, or another victim of Marcus's manipulations? "All right," I finally said. "Come over. You know the address." Chloe arrived an hour later, no makeup, eyes red from crying. She looked like a child. Mom showed her into the living room and pointedly remained in the doorway. She had no intention of leaving me alone with this woman. "I came to apologize," Chloe started immediately, not meeting my eyes. "And to tell you the truth, I'm listening. Marcus told me you had separated, that you had left him for another man, abandoned your son, and that he was an unlucky single father trying to rebuild his life. I believed him. I loved him." She paused, crumpling a tissue in her hands. "Then I found out you were in the hospital. I accidentally overheard a phone call. He was talking to some man, a creditor, I think. He said that everything would be sorted out soon, that his wife was sick, and that he would take the house and the money." Mom snorted in the doorway. "And you kept quiet?" "I didn't know what to do. I thought maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe he was just worried about his debts." Chloe looked up at me, her large green eyes filled with tears. "But yesterday when the police came, when you came back, I realized he had been lying to me the whole time, just like he was lying to you." I looked at her, trying to sort out my feelings. Anger, yes, was there. Resentment, too. But strangely, what I felt most strongly was tired sympathy. This girl wasn't an enemy. She was just another pawn in Marcus's game, just as I had been once. "What do you want from me?" I asked directly. "I want to help. I know some things that might be useful to you." "What exactly?" Chloe took out her phone. "Recordings, Marcus's conversations. He didn't know I sometimes listened in. I was scared. I wanted to understand what was going on. For the last 2 months, he was constantly calling someone, nervous, shouting." She offered me the phone, but I shook my head. "Not to me, to my attorney. She'll figure out what can be used." Chloe nodded, putting the phone back in her purse. "And one more thing." She hesitated again, and a blush flooded her pale cheeks. "I'm pregnant." Mom gasped in the doorway. I silently looked at this girl, who, without realizing it, had entangled herself in a situation that could ruin her life. "Does Marcus know?" "Yes. He told me to get rid of the baby, said he couldn't deal with it right now, that he needed to resolve his financial problems first, and then he could think about kids. He gave me money for the procedure." "And what did you decide?" Chloe looked at me with desperate defiance. "I'm having the baby, with him or without him. It's my child." I nodded silently. What was there to say? This girl was facing difficult times ahead. Single motherhood, possibly court battles for child support, endless problems with the father of her child. But it was her choice, and perhaps the only right one. "Leave your contact information with my attorney," I said. "The recordings may be helpful. And hang in there." Chloe left, leaving behind a feeling of nagging wrongness. 25, pregnant by a married man who used and abandoned her. How easily Marcus ruined other people's lives without even thinking about the consequences. Ms. Harper came that same day, later in the evening. She listened to my story about Chloe's visit and took her contact information. "The recordings are good," she said, making notes in her pad, "but they'll need to be verified. If there's an admission of fraud or a discussion of the scheme with the house, that's gold. If not, it's still useful. Character assassination, so to speak." She put down her pad and looked at me seriously. "Naomi, I have news. Not the most pleasant." "What now?" "I did some digging into your husband's financial status. He's in debt. Very serious debt. I knew about the loans. Not bank loans. Or not only bank loans. Marcus was borrowing money from private lenders at high interest and not paying it back. I felt a chill inside. How much? By my count, around $500,000, maybe more, $500,000, an amount I couldn't earn in 10 years. Where did he rack up that debt? Ms. Harper shrugged. Business ventures that didn't pan out. Sports betting. Yes, he gambled a lot. Expensive gifts for mistresses. Maintaining a double life costs money. And who does he owe? Various people. But among them is one, shall we say, unpleasant character. A businessman named Rudy Ahmed. Officially, he owns a chain of car washes and tire shops. Unofficially, I understand. In our city, everyone knew who Rudy Ahmed was. A man people turned to when the banks refused, and a man who knew how to collect debts in ways that weren't written in law books. Marcus owed him $150,000. That was the amount he was trying to get by selling my house and car. So that's it. The picture finally came together. Marcus didn't just want to get rid of his sick wife and start a new life. He was cornered. Ahmed was demanding the money, and Marcus decided to take it where he could, from his own family. What will happen when Ahmed realizes the money isn't coming? I asked. Ms. Harper paused. Nothing good. But that's Marcus's problem, not yours. What if he tries to get to us, to Miles? Ahmed isn't an idiot. He won't mess with women and children. It's bad for business. But just in case, I would advise installing a security system and being extra careful. After the attorney left, I sat in the kitchen for a long time, staring out the darkening window. Mom silently put a cup of tea in front of me. Bad news? She asked. Worse than I thought. Marcus owes money to dangerous people. And now what? Now we'll be careful. And we wait. We didn't have to wait long. 3 days later, Marcus was arrested. The 2 complaints of fraud from the deceived buyers of the house and car did their work. He was called in for questioning, and after the questioning, he wasn't sent home. His pretrial measure was detention. Ms. Harper called me early in the morning to tell me. He's locked up, she said without preamble. The detective felt there was a risk of flight or witness tampering. He'll sit until the trial. I hung up and felt a strange emptiness. Not joy, not satisfaction, emptiness. The man I had lived with for 12 years, the father of my child, was now in a cell, and he had only himself to blame. Miles heard about his father's arrest from his classmates. He came home from school gloomy and silent, threw his backpack in the corner, and locked himself in his room. I knocked and went in without being invited. He was sitting on the bed, staring at his phone. "Miles, we need to talk." "I know," he mumbled, not looking up. "Dad was arrested. Everyone in class is talking about it." "Yes, that's true." "Why?" I sat down next to him, choosing my words carefully. How do you explain to a 9-year-old child that his father is a swindler, that he cheated people, took their money, lied to everyone? "Dad did some bad things," I finally said. "He took money from people and didn't pay it back. It's called fraud. People get punished for that." "But he didn't mean to." Miles finally looked at me, his eyes full of tears. "He's a good person. He said he just needed time, that everything would be fine." "Honey, sometimes adults make mistakes, serious mistakes, and they have to be accountable for them." "It's your fault," he suddenly cried out. "You reported him. You had him locked up." The word stung more than I expected. But I didn't turn away. I didn't leave. "No, Miles, it wasn't me. Other people reported your father, the ones he cheated. I had nothing to do with it." "That's not true. Dad said you want to destroy him, that you're mean and greedy." "Your father said a lot of things that weren't true. He said I abandoned you. But you see, I'm here. I didn't go anywhere." Miles was silent, swallowing his tears. I reached out a hand, but he pulled away. "Go away. I want to be alone." I left the room, closing the door behind me. Mom was standing in the hallway. "Did you hear that?" I asked. "I heard. It will pass, honey. Children can't stay angry at their parents forever." "What if it doesn't pass?" Mom put her arm around my shoulders. It will. Give him time. Time passed. The investigation gathered momentum. Marcus sat in the detention center. His attorney tried to get him house arrest, but without success. Too many counts, the guilt too obvious. Chloe did hand over the recordings to Ms. Harper, and there was a lot of interesting material. Listen to this. The attorney played a recording on her phone. Marcus's voice was nervous, breaking. Yes, I understand. I'll have the money, I told you. I'm selling the house in a few days. The buyer is already lined up. No, my wife won't find out. She's in the hospital. I'll have the power of attorney forged. I know a guy at the title company. Another voice, low and calm. Marcus, you've been promising for 3 months. Rudy Ahmed is getting nervous. And when he gets nervous, everyone suffers. You understand, right? I understand. I understand everything. A week, 2 weeks maximum. The recording cut off. That's an admission of intent to commit fraud, Ms. Harper said. He was planning in advance to sell the house with fake documents while you were in the hospital. The detective will be thrilled. The detective was indeed thrilled. The recordings were added to the case. The number of counts grew. Now, Marcus was facing not just probation, but serious jail time. And I thought about how little I had known him. 12 years by his side, and I hadn't seen who he really was. Or maybe I hadn't wanted to see. One day, my mother-in-law, Barbara Ellington, called. A bossy, categorical woman who had never liked me. In all the years of our marriage, she never missed an opportunity to point out my flaws. I didn't cook well enough. I didn't raise my grandson properly. I didn't dress stylishly enough. In her eyes, Marcus was the perfect son, and I was an unworthy wife. Naomi. My mother-in-law's voice was cold. We need to meet. Why? To discuss the situation. My son is in prison because of you, and you are calmly living in your house and raising my grandson. It's unfair. I felt anger boil up inside me. Barbara, your son is in prison because of himself. He defrauded people, forged documents, and took other people's money. I have nothing to do with it. Lies. Marcus couldn't have done that. You set him up. You and your mother. You deliberately arranged for the house to be in her name so you could accuse him later. I couldn't help but laugh. It was so absurd that the anger subsided. Barbara, do you hear yourself? We put the house in my mother's name 20 years ago, before Marcus was even in our lives. You think we planned to set him up then? I will fight for my grandson. My mother-in-law's voice became shrill. You have no right to raise him. You're sick, unbalanced. Take it to court. They'll sort it out. I hung up. My hands were shaking slightly, not from fear, but from tension. Barbara could indeed file a petition for visitation rights. Grandparents had that right in certain circumstances, but her chances were slim. I was the mother, healthy, employed, with stable living conditions. Still, it was another front in this war. The trial began 2 months later. An autumn morning, the courthouse, a crowd of people at the entrance, journalists. The case was sensational. The commercial director of a well-known construction firm, large-scale fraud, forgery of documents. I sat in the witness section. Next to me were Mom, Ms. Harper, and Chloe. The deceived buyers, a middle-aged couple, an elderly man with a cane. We were all there to see justice done. Marcus was brought in under guard. He had changed drastically over the months. Thinner, haggard. His eyes held a hunted look. When he saw me, he flinched and tried to move in my direction, but the guard held him back by the shoulder. The judge read the indictment. 3 counts of fraud, forgery of documents, causing significant financial damage. The prosecutor requested 6 years in federal prison. Marcus's attorney tried to soften the picture, talking about difficult life circumstances, debt, and pressure from creditors. He asked the court to consider that the defendant had no prior convictions, had a minor child, and repented for his actions. Then the victims were given the floor. The couple told how they had saved for 10 years to buy a house, how they had trusted the charming seller, and how they were left without $75,000. The elderly man told how he wanted to buy a car for his disabled son, how he gave up his last savings. When it was my turn, I stood up and looked at Marcus. He averted his eyes. "I only want to say one thing," I began, my voice surprisingly steady. "This man was my husband for 12 years. He is the father of my son. I trusted him, and he took advantage of my illness to try to steal my home and take my child. This was not a mistake or an accident. This was betrayal. Deliberate, planned betrayal." I paused, gathering my thoughts. "I am not asking for a harsh sentence. I am asking for justice for everyone he cheated, and for our son, who needs to know that bad actions have consequences." Marcus finally looked up at me. There was something in his eyes. Not remorse, no. More like annoyance. The annoyance of a losing gambler, caught cheating. The verdict was announced a week later. 4 years in federal prison. Less than the prosecutor requested, but enough for Marcus to understand that the fairy tale was over. As the judge read the sentence, Marcus stood motionless, only the muscles in his jaw twitching. Barbara, sitting in the gallery, wept quietly. Chloe looked away, her hand resting on her rounded belly. The verdict didn't make me happy, nor did it particularly upset me. It was simply a weight off my chest. It was behind me now. The trial was over, justice had prevailed, and life could move on. After the hearing, Chloe approached me. "Naomi, thank you for not accusing me, for not tearing me down. I would have understood if you—" "You're not to blame," I interrupted. "He cheated everyone. You too." She nodded, wiping her eyes. "I'm due soon. It's a boy." "Congratulations." "I was thinking, maybe someday, maybe our boys could meet. They are brothers after all. Half-brothers, but still." I thought about it. Half-brothers, true. Same blood, same father. But did Miles need another reminder of the man who had betrayed him? "I'll talk to Miles," I finally said. "If he wants to, we'll figure something out." Chloe smiled gratefully and left. I stood on the courthouse steps, turning my face to the autumn wind, and thought about the strange turns life takes. Just 3 months ago, I was lying in a hospital, weak and helpless, and now I was a free woman who had won a battle against the man who wanted to destroy me. But the victory wasn't complete. There was still Miles. After the verdict, he became completely withdrawn, stopped talking to me, answered in monosyllables, and locked himself in his room. Problems started at school. Teachers complained about his distraction and conflicts with classmates. I tried to reach him, cooked his favorite meals, offered to watch a movie together, or go somewhere for the weekend. He refused everything. "Miles, please talk to me." "I don't want to." "I know this is hard for you, but I'm your mother. I love you." "You love Dad too, and then you put him in jail." It was unfair and hurtful, but I understood. The child couldn't accept the truth. It was easier to blame me than to admit that his adored father was a swindler and a liar. Mom advised me to give him time. Ms. Harper suggested a child psychologist. I agreed to the latter and found a specialist. I scheduled Miles for an appointment. For the first few sessions, he was silent, sitting in the psychologist's office, staring at the wall, answering only yes and no. But gradually, something shifted. One day, he came home from his appointment with red eyes and silently hugged me in the entryway. "Mom," his voice trembled. "Why did he do that to us?" "I don't know, honey. I don't know." We stood there for a long time, embracing, silent, sensing each other. And I knew this was the start, not the end, but the beginning of healing. A few more weeks passed, winter came, and the first snow fell. Life gradually returned to normal. I went back to work. Miles went to school. Mom fussed over the house. Outwardly, everything looked nearly all right. One evening, Miles came into my room. In his hands was his old phone, the children's one we gave him for his 7th birthday. "Mom, I want to show you something." "What is it?" He sat down next to me and turned on the phone. "Remember a month ago when Dad was arrested? He came to school for me that day, picked me up early, said we needed to talk." I tensed. "You didn't tell me." "I know. I was angry at you then. I thought you were the bad one. But then I listened to all of this." He pressed the screen, and the room was filled with Marcus's voice. The recording was poor quality, but the words were clearly distinguishable. "Miles, listen to me carefully. They might take me away soon. The police, you understand? Your mother has been saying all kinds of things about me. She wants to put me in jail. But you need to know the truth. I didn't do anything wrong. It's all your grandma. She purposely set everything up to take our house, and your mom is helping her. They are bad, Miles. They want to separate us." Miles's voice, thin and scared. "But Mom said—" "Mom is lying. They are all lying. You have to believe only me, understood? When they take me away, keep quiet. Don't tell them anything. And remember that Dad loves you and will be back soon." The recording cut off. I sat motionless, feeling an icy rage building inside. "He was trying to turn you against me," I said softly. I know now. The psychologist explained that it's called manipulation." "Yes, it is manipulation." Miles paused. "Mom, I want you to show this to your attorney. It's evidence too, right?" I looked at my son, at his serious, prematurely grown-up face, and realized he was no longer the little boy who clung to my hand at the school gate. He was growing up and maturing faster than I wanted. "This is a very important recording, Miles. Thank you for showing me. The psychologist told me I shouldn't keep something like this inside, that I need to share it with the people I love." I hugged him tightly. "She's right. You're a good boy, Miles. I'm proud of you." The recording was added to the case file. It didn't affect the verdict, which was already in force, but it could be useful if Marcus tried to challenge custody after his release. Evidence of an attempt to turn a child against his mother is a serious argument. Barbara Ellington did file a petition for visitation rights as she threatened, but after the recording and the psychologist's report on the attempts at manipulation were announced in court, her claims were dismissed. My mother-in-law left the courtroom with a stony face and hadn't called since. Life continued. Slowly, difficultly, but it continued. Miles started doing better in school. He made friends, normal kids from a parallel class. He joined the swim team, and every Tuesday and Thursday, I drove him to the pool. On the way, we talked about school, movies, and life. He no longer withdrew or ran away to his room. Something inside him had begun to thaw. One day, as we were driving back from practice, he asked, "Mom, will you ever forgive Dad?" I paused, thinking about the answer. "I don't know, honey. Forgiving doesn't mean forgetting, and it doesn't mean pretending nothing happened. What does it mean then? It means stopping the anger, stopping thinking about the bad things, letting go." "Are you still angry?" "Sometimes, but less and less." Miles nodded, looking out the window at the passing streetlights. "I'm going to try to let go too," he said quietly. "The psychologist says it's the right thing to do." I reached out and stroked his head. "We'll get through this, Miles. Together." Winter was ending. The sun was shining brighter. The snow was melting, revealing the grass from last year. I looked out the window and thought that spring was coming soon. A new spring, a new life. I was promoted at work. Now I was the financial director. More responsibility, more money, more opportunities. Colleagues greeted me respectfully in the hallways. The CEO invited me to meetings on strategic issues. I was needed and in demand. Mom decided to stay with us permanently. She sold her share of Auntie Clara's house in rural Georgia and invested the money in renovating our home. Now we had a new roof, a refreshed facade, and a rebuilt deck, which we enclosed and turned into a sunroom. Chloe had her baby, a boy she named Art. Sometimes she would send me pictures. I don't know why. Maybe she was looking for some connection, some confirmation that we were still part of the same story. I replied politely, but kept my distance. Maybe later, when the children grew up. But now it was too soon. And then March came, and David walked into my life. David appeared in my life by chance, as all truly important people do. We bumped into each other at the community clinic, where I had gone for a follow-up appointment after my surgery. He was leaving the surgeon's office. I was going in. We collided in the doorway. He held my elbow to keep me from falling. "Excuse me," he said with a smile. "I was lost in thought." "It's nothing." A simple encounter that should have been forgotten in a minute, but it wasn't, because an hour later, when I came out of the office, he was sitting in the hallway reading a magazine. He saw me and stood up. "You again?" "Me again." I couldn't help but smile. "David," he offered his hand. "Naomi." That's how our acquaintance began. Then there was coffee in the hospital cafeteria. It turned out he worked there as a family practice doctor, just consulting with a colleague about a complex case. Then came exchanging phone numbers, calls in the evenings, and meetings at cafes on weekends. David was 42, divorced. His daughter, a college student, lived with his ex-wife in another city. He was calm, reliable, with warm brown eyes and a touch of gray at his temples. He didn't try to sweep me off my feet, didn't shower me with compliments, didn't promise the moon. He was simply present, attentive, caring, and genuine. Mom approved of him silently but eloquently. Every time he came to visit, the best dishes from her repertoire appeared on the table. Miles was initially wary of the new person in our house, but gradually warmed up, especially after David took him to a hockey game and taught him how to play chess. "Mom," Miles asked one evening, "is Uncle David going to live with us now?" "Not yet. We're just friends." "And later?" "I don't know, honey. Time will tell." I really didn't know. After everything that happened with Marcus, I was afraid to trust a man again, afraid to make a mistake, afraid the story would repeat itself. David understood this and didn't rush me. He waited. His patience spoke louder than any words. Spring was gaining strength. The trees in the garden were covered in buds. The birds had returned from the south. The air smelled of pines and fresh earth. Life flowed smoothly and calmly for the first time in many long months. Then a letter arrived, an ordinary envelope with no return address. Inside, a single page covered in familiar handwriting. "Naomi, I'm writing this because I know you won't answer my calls. I know I was wrong about you and Miles. I know I deserve everything I've gotten. I have a lot of time to think here in prison. And I've been thinking about us, about our family, about what I lost. I've changed, Naomi, truly changed. When I get out, I want to ask for your forgiveness. Personally, looking you in the eyes, I don't expect you to forgive me, but listen to me, for Miles' sake at least." Marcus. I read the lines and felt nothing. No anger, no pity, no hope, just emptiness. The words of a man who realized too late what he had done. "What is it?" Mom looked over my shoulder. "From Marcus." She read the letter and snorted contemptuously. "He's changed, all right. A wolf in sheep's clothing." "Mom, what? You're not going to forgive him, are you?" "No, but I don't want to hate him anymore either. I'm tired." Mom paused, then hugged me. "You're right, honey. Hatred takes too much energy. Let him live his life, and we'll live ours." I put the letter in a desk drawer. I didn't throw it away. I kept it for some reason. Maybe as a reminder, or as proof that all of this really happened. The summer was hot. Miles finished the 4th grade with straight A's for the first time in 2 years. We celebrated by taking a trip to the beach, me, Mom, Miles, and David. We rented a small house right on the water, swam, sunbathed, and ate peaches right off the tree. Those were the happiest days in a long time. I looked at my son, who was running around the beach with new friends, at my mother, who was reading a book in a deck chair, at David, who was teaching Miles to swim the crawl, and I thought that happiness was possible, even after everything, even after betrayal, pain, and disappointment. Life goes on, and there is room for joy. One evening, after Miles was asleep and Mom had gone to her room, David and I sat on the porch and looked at the stars. "Naomi," he said quietly, "I want to tell you something. I'm listening. I understand that you're scared. After everything that happened, you're afraid to trust again, to open up again. I'm not rushing you, but I want you to know I'm not going anywhere. I'll be here for as long as you need me." I turned to him, looking into his eyes, warm, honest, with no hidden agenda. "How do you know I'm scared?" "I can see it. You're always on guard, as if you're waiting for a trick, as if you're preparing for a blow." He was right. I was waiting for this man to turn out to be just like Marcus, that behind the nice words lurked a lie. That happiness was a trap that would snap shut sooner or later. "I'm not Marcus," David said, as if reading my thoughts. "I don't know how to talk a good game or promise the impossible, but I know how to be present, and no one will take that away from me." I rested my head on his shoulder. For the first time in a long time, I felt peace. True, deep peace. "Thank you," I said, "for your patience, for being here." "You don't have to thank me. You made yourself happy. I just happened to be next to you at the right time." We sat there until dawn, silent, holding hands, listening to the sound of the ocean. And I thought that maybe this was love. Not fireworks and passion, not oaths and promises, but this quiet presence next to you, the certainty that you won't be betrayed. Autumn brought news. Marcus was released on parole. He served 2 years of his 4-year sentence, had a positive character report, and was eligible for release. Ms. Harper called to warn me. "He was released yesterday. We don't know where he's staying yet. He hasn't made contact." What should I do? Nothing out of the ordinary. If he tries to contact you, don't respond to the provocations. If he shows up, don't let him in without witnesses. If he starts threatening you, call the police immediately. I wasn't afraid. Strangely, I wasn't afraid. Marcus was a part of the past that no longer had power over me. He could come, he could say whatever he wanted, but he couldn't change anything anymore. He showed up a week later. He rang the doorbell in the evening when Mom, Miles, and I were having dinner. David was on call at the hospital that day. I looked through the peephole and saw him, older, haggard, with a faded look in his eyes. Not the confident, smiling man I had once married. "Who is it?" Mom asked. "Marcus." She frowned and got up from the table. "Don't open it." "Mom, wait." I turned to Miles. He sat motionless, gripping his fork. "Honey, your father is here. Do you want to see him?" Miles was silent for a few seconds, then shook his head. "No, I don't." "Are you sure?" I went to the door, but I didn't open it. I just spoke through the wood. "Marcus, go away." "Naomi, please." His voice sounded muffled. "I need to talk. To you and Miles." "Miles doesn't want to see you." "I do too, but I'm his father." "You were his father, and then you chose something else. You chose deceit, money, another woman. You gave up on us yourself." "I changed in prison. I understood." "I'm happy for you, but it doesn't change anything." Silence. Then a heavy sigh. "Naomi, I'm not asking you to come back. Just let me see my son. Just once." I looked at Miles. He was sitting at the table, tense, pale. He met my gaze and shook his head again. "When Miles wants to, he'll call you himself. He has your number. Now leave." Footsteps outside the door, slow and retreating. Then silence. Mom came up to me and hugged me. "Good girl, honey." "I pity him," I suddenly said. "It's strange, isn't it? After everything he did, I pity him." "That's because you're a good person, but pity isn't a reason to let him back into your life." Miles got up from the table and came over to us. "Mom," he said quietly, "I don't want to see him. Not yet. Maybe later when I'm grown up, but not now." I hugged him tight. "That's your right, honey. No one can force you." Marcus didn't come back. Sometimes he sent messages to my phone and sometimes to Miles's, but we didn't reply. Gradually, the messages became less frequent, then stopped altogether. Ms. Harper found out that he had moved to another state, started some job, starting life over. I didn't know whether to be happy about it or not, but I definitely felt relief. The past had finally let me go. Life continued in its usual course. Miles started the 6th grade, got into programming, and began dreaming of creating his own computer game. Mom took up gardening, planting roses, setting up a rock garden, and adopting a cat named Buddy. David started coming over more and more often, and one day, he stayed for good. We didn't have a wedding. We just signed the papers at the Justice of the Peace without guests or celebrations. Miles was the witness for the bride, Mom for the groom. After the signing, we went to a little diner, ate a slice of cake, and drank sparkling cider. "To a new life," David said, raising his glass. "To a new life," I repeated. And it really was a new life. Not perfect. Perfect doesn't exist, but good, genuine. A year after our wedding, Chloe called me. Her voice was excited but joyful. "Naomi, hi, I wanted to tell you, Art just turned 1 and took his first steps." "Congratulations," I said sincerely. "Thank you. And I'm getting married, to a good man. He knows everything about Art, about Marcus, and he accepts us anyway." "I'm happy for you, Chloe." "Naomi, I wanted to ask, maybe someday, Art and Miles could meet. They are brothers after all." I thought about it. Half-brothers. That was true. Same blood, same father. But did Miles need another reminder of the man who had betrayed him? "I'll talk to Miles," I finally said. "If he wants to, we'll figure something out." That evening I asked my son. He was silent for a long time, then said, "Art isn't to blame for having a father like that, and I'm not to blame either. Maybe we could meet sometime? Just not right now. I need a little more time." "Okay, honey. However much time you need, you'll have." 6 months later, Miles asked to organize the meeting himself. We went to visit Chloe. She now lived in a small apartment on the outskirts of the city with her husband and little Art. The boys liked each other right away. Art was still very small, 18 months, funny, chubby, with red curls like his mother's. Miles played with him all evening, showing him toys, building towers out of blocks, and driving toy cars. As we were leaving, Miles said thoughtfully, "Mom, Art looks like Dad, the young version." "I saw pictures." "Yes," I agreed. "He looks like him. But he won't be like Dad because his mother is good, and his new father is good too. I saw the way they look at him." I stroked my son's head. "You've grown up so much, Miles." "I'm 11, Mom. That's a lot." "It is a lot," I smiled. Several more years passed. Miles grew up, turning into a tall, serious teenager. He graduated high school with honors and was accepted into a prestigious technical university for computer science. David helped him with math. I helped with English. Mom was proud of her grandson to tears. One autumn evening, I stood by the window of my house, the one Dad built himself, the one Mom saved for me, the one Marcus tried to steal. I looked at the garden, where the last asters were fading, at the sky, overcast with clouds, and at Miles, who was talking on the phone in the yard with some girl. David came up behind me and put his arms around my shoulders. "What are you thinking about?" "About how everything worked out. And how does it feel?" I paused, choosing my words. "You know, a few years ago, I thought my life was over, that I was betrayed, cheated, trampled on, that I would never recover. And now I realize that wasn't the end. It was the beginning. It's as if the old life had to collapse so a new one could emerge. A better one." David kissed the top of my head. "You're a strong woman, Naomi." "I'm not strong, I just didn't give up." Outside the window, Miles finished his conversation, put away his phone, and smiled at something of his own. Young, handsome, full of hope, his whole life ahead of him. Mom came out onto the porch and called us for dinner. An ordinary evening, an ordinary family, nothing special, and that was the special charm of it. I recently had a strange dream. I was lying in the hospital room again, staring at the white ceiling, and the phone rang again. But when I answered, there was silence on the other end. No words, no threats, no betrayal. Just silence. I woke up with a feeling of calm. The past no longer had power over me. The wounds had healed, leaving only faint scars. I learned to live with them and to live well. Marcus is somewhere far away in another state, living another life. Sometimes he messages Miles, rarely, once or twice a year. Miles replies even less often. They agreed to meet when Miles turns 18. Maybe they will meet, maybe not. That's their story now, their relationship. I don't interfere. Chloe is happily married, raising Art and another daughter who was born 2 years ago. Art knows he has an older brother and dreams of getting to know him better. Miles promised to teach him programming when he gets older. Barbara Ellington never forgave me, but that's her choice, her right. I don't hold any ill will toward her. Today is Sunday, a bright autumn morning outside the window, the last warmth before a long winter. Mom is baking an apple crumble. David is reading the newspaper. Miles is packing his things. He's heading back to college tomorrow. A new semester is beginning. I sit at the table and think about how strangely life is constructed, how you can build something new from ruins, how betrayal can become the start of freedom, and how pain can turn into joy. Mom, Miles peeks into the kitchen. Have you seen my charger? Check the sunroom. You were sitting there yesterday. Right, thanks. He runs off, stomping loudly up the stairs. Mom shakes her head. You were exactly like that at his age, just as absent-minded. It's hereditary. I smile. David puts down his newspaper and looks at me over his glasses. What are we going to do today? Nothing special. Just live. He smiles that smile I fell in love with. Just living is the best thing we can do. And he's right. After everything that happened, just living, just being grateful for every day, just being happy, that is the greatest victory. Not over Marcus, not over circumstances, but over my own fear and pain. And I stand up and walk to the window. In the garden, the last roses, Mom's pride, sway in the wind. Buddy the cat is warming himself on the porch. The sound of Miles's laughter drifts in from somewhere. He found the charger and is video calling someone. An ordinary morning, an ordinary life. My life, and it is wonderful. I'm really glad you're here and that I could share my story with you. If you liked it, show me by liking the video and subscribing to my channel. Let's see how many of us there are. Write in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is. I'm so curious to know where all you wonderful people are tuning in from. If you want to support me a little extra, you can also send a small donation. I share new life stories for you every single day. And now, 2 of my most popular stories will pop up on the screen so you can choose what to watch next.